The sound of a motorcycle echoed through a quiet neighborhood just after sunset. I looked out through the blinds and saw a black sports bike stop directly in front of my house. The rider removed his helmet, checked his phone, and dialed a number. A second later, my wife's phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. She glanced at the screen, quickly picked it up, and whispered, "Hello?" I froze before I even realized I was holding my breath. Then I heard his voice through the slightly open window. "Get ready for tonight." Those 4 words instantly turned an ordinary evening into the beginning of a nightmare I never expected to live. My wife looked toward the living room, assuming I was still upstairs working. She lowered her voice even further, but I was already close enough to hear every sentence. "He's home," she whispered nervously. The man outside laughed. "Relax. I'll wait 5 minutes. Meet me at the corner like always." My heart pounded against my chest. I wanted to rush outside and drag him away from my house, but something inside me stopped me. If I acted now, I'd only hear excuses. If I stayed silent, I might finally learn the truth hidden behind months of strange behavior, late-night phone calls, and unexplained errands. Instead of confronting her, I quietly walked upstairs and pretended to close my office door. A minute later, I heard soft footsteps. She opened the front door carefully, looked both ways, and slipped outside. I waited exactly 30 seconds before following. Keeping my distance, I watched her meet the biker near the corner. They didn't hug or kiss. Instead, they spoke urgently while constantly checking their surroundings. The rider handed her a small brown envelope. She hid it inside her purse without opening it. That confused me even more. If this was an affair, why exchange envelopes instead of affection? The mystery had only deepened. Determined to uncover everything, I got into my car and followed them from a safe distance. The motorcycle led the way through several busy streets before stopping near an old warehouse district on the edge of town. My wife stepped off the bike and entered a small office building with the rider. I parked across the street, watching every movement. Nearly 20 minutes passed before another luxury SUV arrived. A sharply dressed man climbed out carrying a briefcase. The biker greeted him with respect. My wife looked uncomfortable, almost frightened. Whatever was happening inside, that building was far bigger than a secret relationship. Curiosity defeated caution. I quietly approached the side of the building where a slightly open window revealed muffled voices. I recognized the biker immediately. "Everything depends on tonight," he said. The businessman placed several documents on the table. "Once she signs these papers, the property belongs to us." My pulse quickened. Property? Papers? Then I heard my wife's trembling voice. I never agreed to hurt him. Silence filled the room before the businessman responded coldly. "You already accepted the money. Now finish what you started." Suddenly, the story inside my head changed completely. Every painful memory from the last 6 months returned at once. My wife had convinced me to transfer our family home into joint ownership after claiming it would simplify future taxes. She constantly asked about insurance policies, bank accounts, and investment papers. I had trusted every explanation because I believed trust was the foundation of marriage. Standing outside that window, I realized someone had carefully manipulated that trust. But one question haunted me more than any other. Was she trapped in something she couldn't escape? Or had she willingly betrayed everything we built together? I knew storming inside would accomplish nothing. Instead, I quietly recorded every conversation I could capture on my phone before leaving unnoticed. On the drive home, my emotions shifted from anger to determination. If they believed I was completely unaware, that misunderstanding would become my greatest advantage. I called an old college friend who had become one of the city's best attorneys. Without revealing every detail of the phone, I simply said, "I think someone is trying to steal everything I own." His response came immediately. "Don't confront anyone. Come see me first thing tomorrow morning." For the first time that night, I felt hope replacing panic. By the time my wife returned home, nearly 2 hours had passed. She smiled as if nothing unusual had happened and casually asked whether I wanted dinner. I smiled back just as naturally. "Sure," I replied, hiding every emotion behind a calm expression. She had no idea I had watched her entire evening unfold. She had no idea I possessed recordings that could expose every lie. Most importantly, she had no idea I had already begun planning my next move. While she believed the game was under her control, I met my attorney before sunrise. I played every mysterious biker realized who was about to make explaining the unusual meeting, the envelope, and the documents I had overheard. He listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair with a serious expression. If these people are attempting to pressure your wife into transfer your property through deception or coercion, we need evidence, not emotion. Within hours, he arranged for a licensed private investigator to quietly examine the businessman, the biker, and every company connected to the suspicious paperwork. I left his office feeling calmer than I had in months. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to betrayal. I was preparing for the truth. Over the following week, I acted as though nothing had changed. My wife continued her routine, believing I remained completely unaware. Meanwhile, the investigator uncovered a disturbing pattern. The businessman had been linked to several questionable real estate transactions involving forged signatures and vulnerable homeowners. The biker wasn't her secret lover at all. He was a courier who delivered documents and cash between victims and the people running the operation. More surprisingly, my wife wasn't the mastermind. She had accepted money after being convinced she was helping with an illegal investment, only to discover too late that the paperwork was part of a fraudulent property scheme. When the investigator obtained surveillance footage and copies of financial records, my attorney contacted the authorities. Instead of confronting anyone ourselves, we handed over every recording, photograph, and document we had collected. Investigators moved quickly, comparing our evidence with complaints from other families who had narrowly avoided similar scams. Piece by piece, the entire operation began to unravel. The businessman and several associates were called in for questioning, while the biker disappeared for 2 days before finally surrendering. Watching professionals handle the case reminded me that patience had achieved far more than anger ever could. That evening, my wife came home looking exhausted. She placed her purse on the table and quietly asked if we could talk. Before she spoke another word, I set my phone on the table and played the recording from the warehouse. Her face lost all color. Tears filled her eyes as she realized I had heard everything. She admitted she had hidden the meetings because she was embarrassed and afraid. What began as a promise of easy money had become threats and intimidation. She insisted she never intended to steal our home, but fear had kept her trapped in a situation she no longer controlled. I didn't interrupt her confession. Instead, I listened until she finished. Then I calmly explained everything my attorney had already discovered. I told her the authorities were investigating the group, and that every decision from this point forward needed complete honesty. She nodded, finally understanding that lies had only strengthened the people manipulating her. Whether our marriage would survive was a separate question, one neither of us could answer that night. But one thing was certain. The truth had finally replaced secrecy, and no amount of excuses could erase the choices that had brought us there. Several months later, the investigation concluded. The fraudulent network collapsed after multiple victims came forward with matching stories. The businessman faced criminal charges, while the biker agreed to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. Because we reported everything before any property transfer was completed, our home remained legally protected. My wife also cooperated fully, helping authorities explain how the organization recruited ordinary people through false promises and intimidation. The experience changed both of us forever, leaving scars that would take years to heal, but also preventing countless other families from becoming victims. As for our marriage, rebuilding trust proved far more difficult than winning the legal battle. We spent months in counseling, confronting uncomfortable conversations we had avoided for years. Some days ended with hope, others ended in silence. Trust, once broken, doesn't return overnight. It requires honesty, accountability, and consistent actions. Whether we ultimately stayed together or chose separate paths mattered less than one lesson we both learned. Secrets create opportunities for manipulation, while truth, however painful, offers the only real chance for freedom. Whenever I hear the sound of a motorcycle stopping outside a house now, I remember that unforgettable evening. I remember the sentence that changed everything. Get ready for tonight. At the time, those words sounded like the beginning of an affair. Instead, they marked the beginning of a much larger deception, one that could have cost me my home, my future, and my peace of mind. I learned that the strongest response to suspicion isn't reckless confrontation, but careful observation, patience, and letting the truth reveal itself. In the end, justice arrived not through revenge, but through evidence, courage, and a decision to do the right thing.